What's going on, everyone? This is Dean Meadows. It is Tuesday, February 5th. I hope you're having a great day. This is another episode of Dean's Dialogue in association with the Daily Apologist. And before we get into today's program, I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Lake Norman Church of Christ who had me over their way this past weekend to answer the question, is Christianity true? Spoiler alert, it is. Great group of people, hospitable. Thank you so much for having me. It was a privilege and an honor to be over there. And if you'd like for any member of the Daily Apologist to come and give a seminar, go ahead and check out our booking section on www.thedailyapologist.com. It's on the home page, and all the information you need to book a member of the Daily Apologist or the team to come over and do a seminar, some training, is right there on the home page. So today's episode involves one of the biggest objections to belief in God, and it's definitely there on the popular YouTube atheists, the internet atheists, and has been used by some notable people in the atheist movement, namely Christopher Hitchens, but also has some academic teeth to it as well. And that charge is that if you believe that God exists, you're simply relying on some type of mental crutch to help you cope with life and to try and reconcile some of the suffering, some of the trials and the tribulations that you'll face in the circumstances and situations that life throws at you. And the guy who I believe, this is just my opinion, who's personally responsible for kind of laying the groundwork for this, is Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud wrote that religious beliefs are illusions, fulfillments of the oldest, strongest, and most urgent wishes of mankind. As we already know, the terrifying impression of helplessness in childhood aroused the need for protection through love, which was provided by the Father, and the recognition that this helplessness lasts through life made it necessary to cling to the existence of a Father, but this time a more powerful one. Thus, the benevolent rule of a divine providence allays our fears of the dangers of life. So, what's Freud's argument here? Freud's argument is that God doesn't actually exist. He's just an invention of our cognitive faculties conjured up because of our childhood need of a protector and for protection. Based on Freud's argument, God is simply a metaphysical illusion. And so the question is, or the questions that I want to raise, the two questions I want to answer in the time that we're together is, hey, is Freud correct? Is the existence of God just some type of coping mechanism for the mentally weak? Now, I have three primary objections to both Freud's specific statement here, but also to people who use this type of reasoning in the atheist community against the belief in God. First, Freud's argument begs the question, it assumes what it intends to prove. Freud's basic argument is that since we know that God does not exist, there has to be a psychological explanation for the belief. So Freud's argument doesn't examine the evidence for the existence of God first. Instead, he assumes that because he does not exist, then we have to look at why someone would believe in God from a psychological perspective. But before Freud can even do that, he has to look at the evidence. He has to examine if there's good reason to believe and good evidence to believe for the existence of God. He simply, in this statement, does not do that. Second, and this is kind of ironic, and I find it a little bit funny, Freud's theory cuts both ways. Sure, it can be argued that humans created God because of their need for security, a father figure, or to cope with the troubles of life, but it can also be argued that atheism is a response to the human desire to freely do whatever one wants without moral obligations to anyone or the constraints of a father figure. It's entirely possible that atheists don't want God to exist because they don't want to be morally accountable to him for the way that they live their life. So why can't theists conclude that this is the way in which atheists think, that this is atheism's version of, or the atheist's version of wish fulfillment? I don't see why that couldn't be the case. I don't see why that wouldn't cut both ways. If it's this way for the theists, they believe that God exists because they need a father figure, then why couldn't we say as theists that atheists don't want God around because they don't want to be morally obligated to a father figure? Third, the problem with Freud's argument, and more so the popular atheist objection along these lines, is that it presupposes why somebody's a Christian. It presupposes that the person who they are talking to as a Christian is mentally weak. And that's just disingenuous to the person you're trying to have a conversation with. That would be like me coming to a conversation with an atheist and presupposing that the reason that this person is an atheist is because they don't read their Bible or have never read the Bible, or maybe even worse, is that this person is an atheist because they had daddy issues growing up. I don't think an atheist would appreciate that presupposition. And so let's just go ahead on both sides of the proverbial aisle here and to say, you know what? I'm not going to presuppose anything about why that person might believe that God exists or why that person might believe that God doesn't exist. And let's just examine the evidence for what it is. And if you have good evidence, then there you go. The belief is true. The reasons for believing are true. So in conclusion, like, the groundwork for this popular objection, I firmly believe, is laid by Freud. But, when you really look at what he's talking about, it begs the question. The objection cuts both ways. And then number 3, it presupposes from the outset that the person who believes in God has a mental crutch, and that's just disingenuous. So because of these reasons, I think we should reject that objection by Freud and by popular atheists on YouTube, and even the academic atheists who write such things. So hopefully, the honest investigation and the honest investigator will survey the evidence for the existence of God rather than just dismiss the belief in God with a questionable psychological explanation or reason. So that's the big reason and the big objection that I have to Freud's objection and to popular atheists' objection for the belief in God. So, hey, once again, thank you guys for listening. Go ahead and check us out at www.thedailyapologist.com. Also, we have a YouTube channel, The Daily Apologist. Go ahead, look it up, check out those videos. Twitter handle is at @daily_apologist. Instagram handle is The Daily Apologist. And once again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Greatly appreciate those who support us financially and spiritually through their prayers, through the encouraging words that you've given us and comments that you've made on our Facebook page, even private discourse and emails. It goes a long way. It keeps our engines going. So have a great Tuesday. Have a great week. And remember, equip yourself to engage culture.